Welcome to r/entitled people, where we share stories from your lives about people who think the rules don't apply to them and they should get what they want. Thank you, friends, for subscribing to the channel and for so many likes. And today we have two great stories, so subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story: scammer posed as a part of my work's company and that a fire inspection was coming and payment was due. Convinced me into breaking down my boss's door and collecting all the cash money I could find and driving to the nearest Shell. But then they mentioned Bitcoin, and as I stood there at the gas station, it all sunk in and I, thank effing God, didn't give them SH. The second story: the new owner orders me to cut the salaries of all the employees. I send him away and leave a letter of resignation. I share it with the other employees and they leave too. His business closes. The first story is: I nearly cost the hotel I work at $2,000 in a scam. Here's the account of events of just 3 nights ago. This is written in fashion for my boss's boss. Names and sensitive information will be altered. I'm sharing this in hope for support and understanding, as I'm really embarrassed and feeling very violated. I also want to spread awareness of this incident and hope that others don't fall for it as well. Note: I work night audit at a hotel, and this is my 3rd week in working here. This is the recording of the sequence of events that happened tonight to the best of my memory and ability. Around midnight, I received a call from Stephen Watson on the hotel phone. He told me that on Monday, September 12th at 11:30 a.m., there would be a fire safety prevention inspection, and that I needed to write down some information. In this, I've attached a picture of all the notes he gave me and told me to write down. Reddit note, not sharing that here. You'll see that he was telling me that today, there was going to be a delivery of a bunch of replacement equipment for all the fire safety things. All the fire alarms, smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, etc. He, being part of our company, explained that he paid the first initial payment, and that Joe, Reddit note, fake name for my boss, had to pay the rest on his end. He was expressing that this was very important, but he was calm and collected. He was very convincing, and asked me questions about myself to keep conversation going, and a sense of friendliness. There were guests that came up and asked something and I attended to them. Then soon after, a guest told me their keys weren't working. This next bit is really only relevant to understand the context to my situation and how he used it for his gain. I made new keys, but they came back saying those didn't work. I then followed them up to their room and tried with my fob key. This didn't work either. I went back and forth trying to figure stuff out. Stephen was being patient, and I went to text Joe about this to ask what to do. And I quickly got a text off a number unfamiliar to me, saying they were Joe, and that this fire safety thing was very, very important. I was worried about not doing what I had thought Joe needed me to do in time, but I also know that guests come first. I can provide screenshots of the text sent to me by Joe. It might be important to mention that I did text Joe's actual number, but he didn't answer, and Joe always answers, so him not responding there was odd, but the fact he responded off a different number soon after saying he received my text from the other phone, but couldn't respond as he was in the middle of trying to work this situation out. It was a bit of back and forth as Stephen was trying to help me with the guest door. The guests were understandably very upset, and Stephen even said I should give them an empty room to sleep in, and in the morning have our maintenance fix the problem. I looked up an empty available room, and then when I proposed that idea to our guests, they were not having it. Eventually, thankfully, their room was a joined room, and their party had the room over, and finally responded and was able to get their door open from the inside. I purposely apologized, but they were still quite upset and a bit drunk. But they finally got in their room, so I was able to go back to what Stephen wanted me to. My brain was a bit fuzzy and jumbled, as that had just happened with guests. I was instructed by Joe that there was a yellow envelope with documents and cash for the payment, and that I had to stay on the phone with Stephen and find it. This was said to be the payment for the new fire alarms and such. They had said that my boss had forgotten to send it out, and that it was urgent, so I had to do it. I didn't quite understand the second half of what that would look like, but with the pace of things, I didn't think as much as I should have about that. At this point, I was told I had to get into Joe's door at all costs. They made that seem normal. I was instructed to try all sorts of keys to get in. I also texted Cole. Reddit note, fake name for my coworker. But then I said to Stephen I just texted my coworker. Maybe he knows which key to use. And Stephen quickly said, oh no, Joe is really embarrassed about this since he should have sent it out a while ago. Please don't get anyone else involved. We will figure it out and work through this. Tell them you were worried about the guests who couldn't get into their room, and that you've gotten it handled. And so that's what I did, thinking I was helping Joe out and protecting him from being embarrassed. This is where I feel incredibly stupid for falling for, but they said that I had to break the door open, and I hesitated, being taken off guard by such an action. Yet they were calm and collected and explained this was very important. I got some somewhat pressured texts from Fake Joe, so I listened as they told me I had to break the door handle. They said, "We pay for insurance every month. It's totally okay. The door handle is nothing." They told me I was going to need a hammer of sorts and maybe some other things, so I got a big sledgehammer from the back. He was telling me things like, "Please be safe. Don't hurt yourself, but this is important." I finally broke open the door by hitting it a few times. He then said I needed to check everywhere for that envelope and cash payment. Everywhere. Saying the mess I made didn't matter as long as I found it. I felt weird, but I deal with diagnosed anxiety, and was internally assuming that yes, this is a lot, but if Joe says so, I gotta do it, and dismissed the feelings of anxiety as my usual response to most things. Steven then had me download WhatsApp so we could video call. He asked me to show him the office on video call to see if he can spot the envelope with me. I searched and searched. Then I went to the front and checked the cash drawer as he told me to. He saw the cash from my video recording and asked me how much it was. I read off the previous till receipt. He went, okay, is there any more cash? And I said I didn't think so. But he had me look. I was having pretty heavy tunnel vision at this point. I found more cash in Joe's office. At this point, he was conveying that this was extremely important, and that if I didn't do it, Joe was going to be in really big trouble, and that Joe was kind of freaking out about this. Because of that, I was going to gather as much money as I could to start the payment, and that Joe was working with the other people to let this be enough for now as to not get in trouble. I'm fairly sure he had it to be $2,000, and I had just around that after collecting money from the till, the drop box, the cash box in Joe's office, and an envelope with money in it from Joe's office. He was then telling me I was going to need to drive somewhere to drop it off. In the back of my head, things started to feel really funky. My body really started to move just on autopilot. I got in the car and drove to the given address. This ended up being a Shell. In here, they have Bitcoin. I remember thinking this was really weird. Why would Joe use Bitcoin? It didn't make sense. Why would he have me leave the hotel? But I walked inside with the money in a bag. Then everything clicked in a way, and I tried calling Joe's cell, the real one. It was blocked and the guy was still on the phone from the app and he was like, "Hey, what's going on?" I had thought I hung up but realized I didn't and made double sure to hang up. This time the call went through and I got a hold of Joe. He sleepily answered hello, and it all started to really sink in. I asked him if there was something going on, my voice barely able to come out of me. He was confused and said no, and was asking if I was okay and what was going on. At this point it all completely dropped on me and I started to cry, and cry hard, and tell him I'm sorry over and over, and I tried to go through what happened, but I was a bit of a mess. Joe told me first to get back to the hotel. I hung up, and as I was driving back, I called my sister crying and freaking out, and she was trying to calm me down. I got back to the hotel, and Joe was calling me back, and then from there we went through what happened. He helped me to have me backtrack and fix some things like putting keys back and away, and double and triple and extra more checking of this and that. He asked several times if I had given any bank information, and I know that I did not. I definitely understood his concerns, and I also knew through and through I did not realize that information. From there, I did my best to clean up the mess I made and get done the normal nightly tasks. There are some things I left out. Things like the really weird comments here and there he made that were flirtatious that in the moment, I internally excused for being just some old man being creepy, but that he was my boss's boss, and definitely in a position of power and authority so as society would have it. I just told myself it was nothing, and to try and not let it get to me. But now I've been feeling really extra uncomfortable about those details, and I haven't shared them with anyone. But that's what happened. And my boss is seriously the kindest human being on this earth, as he said he's not going to fire me, and that yes, it was a pretty bad situation, but that in the end no harm was truly done, and that the broken down door really didn't matter much to him. My coworkers have been overwhelmingly kind and sweet to me about the situation too, and I'm forever grateful. I was feeling like it was truly the end of the world. I still am feeling like I'll never recover from this, and that this is the most embarrassing thing I have and will ever do. I feel very violated and uncomfortable in my skin. This was really scary. I can't believe I effing broke down my boss's door. Like, what the F? SH, I'm sorry you got yourself into this situation, but I'm glad you came to your senses in time. I had a case where scammers pretended to be bank employees and tried to get my information, and when you listen to them, you start to believe them. I don't know why, but it's very hard to shake off that compulsion. I was very lucky to have my cards with me. They said they would call me back at my convenience. When I got home, I realized they were trying to trick me. When they called back, I just told them to go away and tell them to go away. There's a mantra for your case that will help you deal with all scammers. When they say your manager needs you to do X as soon as possible, it will help them a lot. If it's that important, manager needs to get his A down here and deal with it. I don't get paid enough to handle it. I understand the impulse to help, but admitting that many things are just above your pay grade makes you pretty much immune to this sort of thing. The second story is quit because the owner wanted me to cut everyone's pay, and every employee quit as well. Years ago, I was a manager at a sandwich shop, and the owner sold the franchise. About 90% of the employees had been working at the shop for years. Our labor to sales ratio was always great, and the employees made a halfway decent living. The morale was high and the customers could tell. The new owner decides that in order to maximize profits, he wants me to cut everyone's pay, because you can hire people for minimum wage. Why should I be paying people over $10 an hour? I tried telling him that these guys have been working here for years, and the customers like that, and our labor costs are better than any of the other stores. I basically just ignored his request, and after the next payday he called me up peeved. I tell him if he wants to cut everyone's pay, then he has to tell me himself. He goes off on me about how that's my job, that if I want to keep it I better do as I'm told. I tell him that's okay because I quit, and put in my 2 weeks notice. I then call my coworkers and tell them what's going on, and they follow suit and submit their 2 weeks as well. The owner calls me up all apologetic and says he's reconsidered. I tell him his actions don't give me a good sense about the outlook of my future employment, and that he's an SH person. The other employees know that they'll be replaced as soon as he can and still quit as well. About a year and a half later, the store is shut down, as well as about half the others in town he owned. I'm guessing he wished he hadn't tried to maximize his profits, because he lost at least half of them in the long run. I'd like to add that I googled the franchise, and out of the 5 he bought, there's only one of the originals, and it looks like he's opened one new store. Perhaps he thinks other people are to blame for his business model not working. I'm sure he has plenty of stories about how the government or lazy employees made his business fail. Such people are like gamblers who don't know when to stop and lose everything. But an obsessive desire to cut costs to maximize profits is a sign of poor management, and a dying or soon-to-be-dying company. Real growth requires investment, so it's likely that your former boss is going to close again. And probably all the stores too. Only when he learns his lesson and makes working conditions as attractive as possible for new employees will his business take off. I hope you enjoyed these stories. Subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on notifications.